Well, thank you, Kevin, so much for asking me to be here today. Took me a while to sort of figure out what I might say that might be of any importance. Um, I've been on this globe for quite a little while now, so whenever anybody asks me now to, give a little speech to talk about something, um, and I begin, and I all of a sudden feel as if I'm going to go on forever because there is just so much to talk about. So I said to myself, okay, what path should you take to be able to share something that would illuminate not only what the organization is all about, but how I and my thoughts fit into that. And there's so much I could say, but I thought, well, keep it simple. Keep it simple. I then thought, well, I believe the best way that I can lead into a dialogue, a meaningful collaboration, and make it also fit into what the organization stands for. So I thought, if I concentrate on this, the illumination of the resiliency of the human spirit, then I can't go too far wrong, because I do believe that that one thing is the main thread that weaves its way through everybody who comes under the umbrella of this organization. I always, lately, begin with this little piece, which I must say before I even say that, I am so grateful for the opening ceremony here today. I did not expect that. I, on my mother's side, am African and Choctaw. On my dad's side, African and Mi'kmaq. So this meant a great deal to me. What I was going to say about the words that I ponder frequently is this, something that I wrote. Your life is like a patchwork quilt, where the pieces don't mean nothing when they scattered all about, but if you take the time to lay them side by side, well, they got a tale to tell. Who you are, who you were, who you just might be come time. But keep in mind is how you weave them pieces all together that let you know if you made a masterpiece or if you up and went and made yourself a mess. It's the stitching, not the patches, that complete your handiwork. And your gumption be the threads that do the binding on the only winding sheet that you will ever wear before your Maker. So thinking about that, I thought, given the time that I have, and given the task of saying something that magnifies the illumination of the resiliency of the human spirit, I would take you on a little journey. My life, picking up some of the patches, covers a period of time from 1983 to 1998 in Halifax, Nova Scotia. In telling this little story, which is a journey from the corner of Brunswick Street and Cornwallis Street in Halifax, at the St. George's Anglican Church, to Neptune Theatre at the corner of Sackville and Argyle Street, about a 15-minute walk, and how it took 15 years to walk from St. George's Anglican Church to Neptune Theatre, and why the walk had to be made. In 1983, I founded a theatre company, a black theatre company, called Kwacha Playhouse. Kwacha is a word, a Kiswahili word that means dawn of a new day. And this was the second black theatre in Nova Scotia. The first had been founded in 1967, which I co-founded with my great mentor, Evelyn Garbery, who was a lady from Wales. She had studied at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts, had performed with the Abbey Theatre in Dublin, had founded the National Theatre of Wales, and ended up eventually in Canada, first in Montreal, then Toronto, and then finally in Nova Scotia, where I met her. And she became my great mentor, one of them, and a major one. In 1967, she came to me and she said, "Lovey, I want to do a play." The play was called Coming Here to Stay, and it was about the blacks arriving via the Underground Railroad to Nova Scotia between 1813 and 1837. Those were called the refugee blacks. They were the second migration. The first had been the revolutionary blacks in 1782. They were the slaves and ex-slaves who arrived in Nova Scotia, left in many of them in 1792 to found Sierra Leone, to found a city in Sierra Leone. Now, this play, as I say, was about the refugee blacks. What Evelyn had done, because she needed a large black cast, and there were no black actors, professional, except, and I hadn't yet gone to theater school, so I was still doing amateur theater too, but I was teaching school, doing theater, amateur theater, and also working for the Nova Scotia Project, which was a preeminent social, political, civil rights organization, the one of the eastern part of Canada and one of the most important in Canada. So this is what I was doing. So I went with Evelyn. We founded this theater called the Inglewood Community Players. Now, Inglewood was the name of the the black community, one of 37 black communities in Nova Scotia, founded, as I say, by the refugee blacks and the revolutionary blacks. And what she wanted to do was to use as many people in the community, and she ended up using most of them anyway. And it's a fascinating, fascinating story about how we developed that play and whatever. We could talk about this some other time. But the end result was, this was in 1967. That was our, centennial year. The play was presented in the Dominion Drama Festival. It won a bunch of awards. It played in Montreal, and then it played in Toronto. It was quite something. Now remember, these people were not professional actors. They were everyday folks who worked and whatever, and it's hilarious when I describe how we developed the process of getting them from the community hall to the stage. But needless to say, it was a great success. So that was in 1967. In 1969, the Little Theater was still going. Evelyn, by this time, was professor of drama at Acadia University, and she wanted to do the play Blues for Mr. Charlie by James Baldwin. So in the play, you have Blacktown and Whitetown. So she used her students from Acadia and the Inglewood community players, and we put on this play again. It performed for the Dominion Drama Festival. It was a great success, but it soon after that went defunct because these people were doing this just on their spare time kind of thing. And I was ready to do other things. So from 1969 to 1983, there was no theater, black theater. But one thing was for sure, I was the only professional black actor east of Montreal. My equity number is 191. So that will give you an idea of how long I've been at this business. I had also been a school teacher. And while I was teaching, I became very aware of the amount of talent that was in the communities. I had a drive to do something. That something was this, that after for so long being the only black professional actor on the stage at Neptune Theatre, which had become my second home, I wanted one thing. I wanted to see more than me on that stage. I'll just start there. So I started with this little theater group, bringing together all the young people, all the talented young people. I knew that they did not have theater training. And I was not in a position to do that on a daily basis, train them on a daily basis. So I very carefully chose a piece. It's called God's Trombones by James Weldon Johnson. And what that is the play is it is 7 sermons and a prayer written in the vernacular of the old black Baptist preachers of the South. It is just the poetry. So I decided to turn it into a musical, and I put all the necessary gospel and spirituals in it. My purpose was this. the young people would not just be singing, because in order to do this work, I would have to utilize what they call the call response of the old black church. You have your preacher, you have your choir, there's a congregation. But it's the preacher and the choir who have the call response. The preacher preaches, the choir sings, they respond to each other back and forth. So the young people would not only be singing and utilizing that talent, but having to act without knowing they were acting. But it was also something that they did every Sunday morning in church, every Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, Sunday night. So they knew call response. What resulted from that work was a phenomenal success. So in other words, I could tick off my first little thing there. That had been accomplished. Now that production was done in St. George's Anglican Church at the corner of Brunswick and Cornwallis. Why did I do it there when the mother church was right next door? The Mother Baptist Church. Well, St. George's Anglican Church was designed by the King of England, Mad King, married to Charlotte Sophia, the Black Queen. This church was designed like a tiered cake. You had 1, 2, 3 parts. The bottom section part, the huge part, the balcony, and then up the third part up there, which from down below, you could not see anybody up there, although there were openings, because that's where the slaves and servants sat, out of sight. So I chose that church so that we could start the play up there, where the ancestors had sat looking down. This is a phenomenal church. It burned, but they reconstructed it because they had the plans of the original. And it's built in such a way that when you stand downstairs, directly under the topmost tier, and speak, it creates natural quadraphonic sound. It's incredible. So that we started the piece in the top where no one could see, and just the singing, and moved down the outer stairs. And the sounds, because of the way the church is built, sounds as if it's coming out of the walls. And we moved down, and then entered the back of the church up to the choir loft. It was magnificent, magnificent. We invited, because by now she had become our friend, the great late singer, Odetta, to be our honored guest. And it was phenomenal. So we had kicked off well. That was, ticked that off. All right. Now my plan was to have a huge production, some production, on that stage at Neptune, utilizing all the developed talent that it picked up over those years. Between 83 and 98, at managed to get students from that choir, Kwacha singers, some students into Dalhousie University's theater program. Two of those original people, Troy Adams and Jeremiah Sparks, are both here in Toronto now and have developed great careers in musical theater and in drama. And so these steps had to be taken. These steps happened because I didn't plan anything. My aim was what I described to you on that stage. In order to do that, this is what happened. While we were doing God's Trombones, I just so happened to see on PBS the production of The Gospel at Colonus, which is the story of Oedipus returning to Colonus to die. It is done in a Pentecostal church. So you have this great Greek story done in a Pentecostal church with a gospel choir and the various people portraying the characters, Oedipus, his daughters, so on. And I said, that's the piece that has to be on Neptune's stage. Now, what did that mean? It meant that I had to have actor-singers, a choir. I had to have the facility, the person, the artistic director of the theater behind me. I had to have a black musical director. I had to have a choir that director would form, because this choir that I had could not do what was demanded there. These were the things that had to take place. Now, the first thing that happened was this. I, between 83 and 88, was still trying to do my thing, both to develop a career and to continue my activist work, which was my life. It took me out of the province, into the province, whatever, though I was staying there, and keeping in touch with these various talented people that I had met and was directing in various directions over the years. So in 1998, my sister Gloria, my late sister Gloria, decided with me she was going to be my producer. She set up a company, K and G. K for her son Kurt, G for her Gloria. K and G became Kanji Productions. I called on the former members of the choir, added to it to form a new choir, but with the core from the old choir. We renamed ourselves the Wayloland Gospel Singers, Way, Lo, Lynn. Wayne, Lois, and Linda, my three deceased siblings. And we remounted in the same place God's Trombones. This time, CBC got wind of it, came, saw it, filmed it, and the film is out there somewhere. These are in their archives. Needless to say, it was a great success. But the important thing was that everything had moved forward 5 years. We're now in 1988. In 1992, my sister and I produced the International Gospel and Blues Festival in Halifax. It was done to introduce the young, talented people, many of them from that original choir, to the greats of the world. And by that I mean we brought in people like, again, Odetta certainly came back, Cissy Houston, Whitney's mom came, the Barrett sisters from Chicago, the internationally acclaimed Barrett sisters, the gospel singers, Jody Drake, Dutch Robinson, huge names. Why? So that the young people could be mentored by these great artists, black artists, who were thrilled to do that. And for the last time, we performed what? God's Trombones. This time in the largest Anglican church that we had in Halifax, because we needed for the size that, and yeah, again, it was something so unique and special. That was in 92. Now, the choir that performed in that show then was formed into what became the Nova Scotia Mass Choir, which still exists now. That choir was invited to go to Washington, D.C. to celebrate a Martin Luther King Day. While they were there, a gentleman from Las Vegas, Woody Woods, who was a musical director, composer, whatever, happened to be in Washington and saw the choir. He was so taken by the choir, he decided to move to Nova Scotia, to Halifax, for a year to train that choir, which he did. Now, at the same time, it happened that at Neptune Theatre, the new artistic director, Linda Moore, was somebody that I had first met in 1972 when we acted in a play of Mice and Men. She, from between 72 and 92, had become the artistic director at Neptune. She had seen gospel at Colonus and knew and loved it. Woody knew Colonus very well, had seen it in person. Now, what do I have? Well, I had Neptune now on side, Woody on side. Woody and Linda started collaborating, but Neptune was going through a huge transitional period. They were going to gut the old building, leaving only its central core, because it had magnificent acoustics, and build the new theater which exists now around it. And that meant that the theater was going to be closed until 1998. So, everything moved slowly. The choir kept singing, made a CD, did this, did that. Linda kept planning. Woody kept planning. And finally, the theater opens. And Linda decided, in 1998 that she would stage Gospel at Colonus. It was the only time the piece has ever been staged in Canada. And it drew huge attention, naturally. And I remember the day that we had our first full rehearsal on stage. Before the choir and the other actors came down, I sat in the audience, just watched them come in. The band, the actors. By this time, we had actors like Jackie Richardson, Jeff Jones, who played Oedipus, singer Oedipus. Jerry Brown, the great jazz singer, was Esmene, one of the daughters. I was speaker Oedipus. Troy Adams was in it. Jeremiah was in it. I sat there and watched 40 artists now, professional artists, come in, fill up the stage to start the performance. And I just sat there and realized that it had taken 15 years to walk from the corner of Brunswick and Cornwallis Street to the stage of Neptune Theatre, a 15-minute walk away, where one black actor had stood for so many years. Now there were 40 filling that stage, doing a black gospel masterpiece. That is my example of the illumination of the resiliency of the human spirit. The fact that it happened to be orchestrated by this person here is incidental. All that meant was that this person was the one who found himself in a certain position where he had to make a decision whether or not he was going to do what many do and would do, pursue a career exclusive of including, or bide his time and bring through a door that he had opened all those who wanted to come through the door. That is what I will share with you now, hoping that somehow something about that fits into what your aspirations are, what the aspirations are of the organization and those groups that come under the umbrella of that organization. I think there's a meeting point there somewhere. And I hope that this little sharing somehow is a worthy patch in the quilt of your organization. Thank you.